It started subtly, almost funny if it wasn't so. Weird. See, I order out a lot, like pretty much every night. This new app, QuickBite, had killer deals, especially on this place called Mama's Comfort Kitchen, supposedly home-style cooking. But this one dish, their special reserve stew, the meat was odd, not bad, just unfamiliar. The first time I shrugged it off, maybe some exotic game meat. But last night, digging through my stew, my fork snagged on something hard. I tossed it straight in the trash, rinsed my mouth out, feeling my stomach turn. Maybe it was plastic, right? Some broken utensil piece from the kitchen. Yeah, that had to be it. But the explanation felt thin, papery, even to myself. I tried to forget about it, watch some TV, but the image of that little white crescent kept flashing behind my eyelids. The next day I avoided QuickBite. Cooked for myself instant ramen, the safest bet. But by evening, laziness won. QuickBite popped up a notification. Mama's special stew, 50% off. Tonight only. My stomach growled and morbid curiosity gnawed at me. It was probably nothing, right? A one-off contamination. Bad luck. Plus half price. It's stupid, I know, but I convinced myself. Just check it carefully this time, I told myself. So I ordered it again, like an idiot. The doorbell rang. Short, sharp, exactly on time. I took a breath and opened it. Just the brown paper bag sitting on the mat, the thermal container warm inside. No Marco in sight, just the faint whine of a scooter fading down the street. Standard procedure. I picked it up, locked the door, triple-checked the deadbolt. Felt ridiculous doing it, but that little white crescent was still vivid in my mind. Okay, deep breath. I popped the lid. Steam rose, carrying that thick, peculiar scent. The stew looked darker tonight, almost reddish-brown. I grabbed a fork and just poked around. Gently at first, then more aggressively, pushing chunks of meat aside, searching. Found the usual carrots, potatoes, then another hard bit. My heart jumped. I fished it out. Smaller this time, darker, not white plastic. It looked almost like a piece of gravel. No, it was smoother. I rinsed it under the tap. Okay, panic time. Real panic. I slammed the lid back on the container, shoved it into a plastic bag, tied it tight, and threw it in the outside bin immediately. Didn't even want it in the apartment. My mind was racing. Who was Mama? Where did this food asterisk really come from? I grabbed my phone, fumbled opening the QuickBite app, searched for Mama's Comfort Kitchen. There it was. Just a generic logo, no address listed, only delivery, only via QuickBite. The chatbot was useless. Kept asking if I wanted a refund coupon. A coupon. I felt like screaming. I needed answers, not $5 off my next potential horror meal. I closed the app, heart pounding. What could I even do? Go to the police? Officer, I think my delivery stew had a filling in it. They'd think I was nuts. Or worse, they wouldn't, and then what? Where would that lead? I paced my small living room, the floorboards creaking under my weight. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the building, every distant siren ratcheted up my anxiety. I kept thinking about the stew, the texture, that subtle sweetness. How many times had I eaten it? How many pieces had I unknowingly swallowed? Bile rose in my throat. I needed to know where this place was. I remembered the QuickBite app tracked the delivery route. Maybe, just maybe, the data was still there. I grabbed my laptop, logged into the website version, hoping for more detail than the app offered. The next afternoon, I drove out there. The partner hub wasn't a gleaming tech facility. It was a rundown, single-story warehouse with blacked-out windows and rusted corrugated metal siding. No signs, no logos, just a single loading dark door and a smaller, nondescript side entrance. Looked practically abandoned, except for a couple of beat-up delivery scooters parked haphazardly near the side door. One of them looked suspiciously like the one Marco always used. Just as I was about to give up, the side door creaked open. A figure emerged, struggling with a heavy black plastic garbage bag. He was wearing a dark hoodie, hood pulled low, obscuring his face, but the build, it could have been Marco. He hefted the bag towards a large industrial dumpster at the back of the lot. It looked incredibly heavy, sagging strangely, almost liquidly. He strained, then managed to swing it up and into the dumpster with a sickeningly wet thud. Okay, this was insane. I shouldn't be here. I should be driving away, calling the police, doing anything but sitting here watching potential evidence disposal. But I couldn't move. My curiosity had curdled into this cold, morbid dread. I waited until the figure didn't reappear for about 10 minutes, then I did something incredibly stupid. I got out of my car, slipped across the street, keeping low, and crept towards the dumpster. Steeling myself, I took a quick look over the rim. It was piled high with those heavy black bags. Most were tied shut, but one had split open slightly near the top. Inside, it wasn't food waste. It was scraps, not vegetables, not packaging. Pale, fleshy scraps streaked with dark red. Odd shapes, some with skin still attached. And bone fragments, definitely bone this time, larger, splintered. There was a sickening amount of dark, congealed liquid pooled at the bottom of the bag. I scrambled back to my car, fumbling with the keys, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Didn't dare look back towards the warehouse. Just slammed the door, locked it, jammed the key in the ignition. The engine turning over sounded deafeningly loud. I peeled out of there, tires squealing slightly on the grimy asphalt. My reflection in the rearview mirror showed a ghost, pale, wide-eyed, sweat plastering my hair to my forehead. Back in my apartment, door bolted, chain on, windows locked, I felt contaminated, filthy, like the knowledge itself was clinging to me. I threw out everything from my fridge that I hadn't bought myself, scrubbed my kitchen counters raw, took the longest, hottest shower of my life, but I couldn't wash away the feeling, the remembered taste. That was 2 days ago. Haven't left the apartment, haven't eaten much more than dry crackers, haven't spoken to anyone. Last night around midnight I heard it, a soft scraping sound at my door, like something being slid underneath. My blood ran cold. I waited frozen for what felt like an eternity after the sound stopped. Then, slowly, heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break, I crept towards the door. You ever been so hungry you'd consider anything? That question hits different when you're staring at jagged metal ripped open against a backdrop of endless snow and trees. The silence after the screaming stops. It's louder somehow. That's the first thing I remember after the crash. The awful, ringing quiet, broken only by the wind whistling through the broken fuselage. There were 9 of us who crawled out or were pulled out. 9 strangers bound by the sudden, brutal intimacy of shared disaster. We huddled together for warmth, backs against the least damaged part of the hull, the initial shock slowly giving way to the grim reality. Endless white in every direction, broken only by the dark, imposing pines that seemed to press in on us. No signal, of course. The pilot and co-pilot. Well, they weren't getting up. Supplies. It was Arthur, a quiet man in his late 50s with unnervingly calm eyes, who actually read the damned thing aloud on the second day. We were huddled in a makeshift shelter we'd built from seats and luggage, the hunger a constant, painful ache. Survival menu, he read, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Designed for extended stays in Class 4 inhospitable zones. Maximum group efficiency protocols. Then he got to the menu part. It wasn't food items. It was criteria. The first night was brutal. Not just the cold, which seeped into our bones despite the pitiful fire we managed, but the sounds. The wind wasn't just whistling anymore. It sounded like whispering, distorted voices just beyond the edge of the firelight. Every snap of a twig in the oppressive woods made us jump. Sleep was impossible, haunted by the drone of the wind and the gnawing hunger. Sarah kept crying softly, mourning her husband, but there was a new edge to it now, pure terror. Day 3 arrived like a sentence. The tension was unbearable. We chewed on salvaged seat leather, pretending it was sustenance. Marcus tried to organize a scouting party. "We need to find a way out, assess the terrain," he announced, his voice trying too hard to sound confident. David, a young guy, maybe early 20s, barely spoke a word since the crash, volunteered almost immediately. Too quickly, maybe. Days blurred, 4, 5. Hunger wasn't just an ache anymore, it was a dizzying weakness, a fog in the brain that mirrored the endless white outside. The few pretzels were long gone. We boiled snow for water, the fire our only comfort against the relentless cold. Conversation died out, replaced by hollow-eyed stares and the occasional rasping cough. The only thing anyone seemed to have energy for was watching each other, watching the tree line. And someone, I noticed, kept picking up the menu. It was Arthur again, his voice still chillingly calm, who broke the silence on the evening of day 5. He wasn't looking at the menu this time, but at us. "It's logical, you see," he began, and everyone froze. "Survival of the group necessitates difficult choices, random chance, He waved a hand towards the fog-shrouded trees where David vanished. Is inefficient, wasteful. He looked directly at Sarah, who flinched. A system, however distasteful, ensures the strongest, the most useful. The next morning, day 6, someone found David's glove, just the one. It wasn't lying randomly in the snow. It was placed deliberately, almost neatly, on a low-hanging pine branch about 100 yards from the camp, clearly visible. There was a dark, frozen stain on the cuff. Blood. Not a lot, but enough. It felt like a message, a confirmation. David didn't just wander off and get lost. Something happened to him, something methodical, something intended. Nightfall on day 6 was thick with dread. No one slept. We huddled by the dying fire, listening to the wind, listening for something else. Around midnight mark, a man who'd done little but complain and shiver since the crash announced he was going for a walk. "Just need to clear my head," he stammered, his eyes wide with panic. He looked frail, panicked, useless in this environment, textbook non-essential, according to the menu's brutal logic. No one tried to stop him. After Mark vanished, the illusion of this being random misfortune shattered completely. Someone was enforcing the menu. Arthur and Alina were the obvious suspects, the ones who'd voiced support for its logic. But they always seemed to be together, accounted for, especially when Mark left. It didn't quite add up. My suspicion started to shift towards Ben, a large, quiet man who mostly kept to himself, chopping wood with a grim efficiency using a salvaged piece of sharp metal. I couldn't shake the image of Ben and the axe. I needed proof, something concrete before confronting him. Accusing someone in this situation could be a death sentence, one way or another. Driven by fear and a desperate need to know, I waited until Ben was ostensibly asleep near the fire, his breathing heavy. Then, feigning a need to relieve myself, I slipped out into the pre-dawn gloom, heading towards the area where I'd seen him cleaning the axe. The fog was thick, swirling around my knees. I stumbled back to the shelter, shaking. The image of that gruesome kit burned into my mind. I had to say something. "Now, Ben," my voice cracked, loud in the quiet shelter, everyone startled awake. "I know what you're doing. I found you. Your tools." I pointed a trembling finger towards the woods. Ben's eyes snapped open, cold and hard. He didn't deny it. He slowly got to his feet, the makeshift axe still near his hand. Arthur and Alina also stood, flanking him almost protectively. It didn't come to blows, not immediately. Ben just stood there, radiating menace, while Arthur explained the necessity with chilling clarity. How David and Mark's contributions were ensuring the core group remained strong. He spoke of rations, carefully prepared, stored away. My stomach churned. It was worse than I imagined. As Arthur spoke, trying to justify the monstrous acts, my eyes scanned the cramped shelter, desperate for an escape, for anything. And then I saw it. Seeing my name circled the note, something snapped. Primal fear took over. I shoved past a startled James, bolting out of the shelter and into the blinding white and fog. "Get him!" Ben roared behind me. I didn't look back, just plunged into the trees, slipping and sliding on the treacherous snow, branches whipping my face. I could hear him crashing through the undergrowth behind me, surprisingly fast for his size. Arthur and Alina wouldn't be far behind. They were invested in this sick system. I don't know how long I ran, how I evaded Ben. Maybe the fall down the ravine threw him off. Maybe the fog was just too thick. Eventually, exhausted, bleeding from a dozen scratches, I collapsed in the snow, expecting the killing blow at any second. Instead, I heard it. A distant whirring sound. Faint at first, then growing louder. A helicopter. Rescue. Tears of relief froze on my cheeks. You know that feeling you get? Like eyes are burning into the back of your head, even when you're miles from anywhere. Yeah, that's how it started for me, deep in the Blackwood forest. I've been hiking for maybe 3 days, completely off-grid, just trying to clear my head, you know. But that third evening, as the sun started bleeding through the canopy, painting everything orange and long-shadowed, that prickly feeling crawled up my spine. It wasn't just the usual forest quiet settling in. This was different. By the time I admitted I was properly lost, full dark had settled in. Not just dark, but that suffocating, black velvet kind you only get miles away from any hint of civilization. My map was useless. Landmarks had vanished hours ago, swallowed by the identical trees and the creeping fog. Panic started its cold little dance in my chest. Then I heard it. A faint asterisk, click, 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 asterisk, like pebbles being tapped together, but rhythmic, precise. It echoed weirdly in the fog-deadened air. My first thought was maybe a woodpecker, but it was pitch black, and the sound was too low to the ground to deliberate. It stopped. I stood stock still, heart hammering against my ribs, straining my ears. Nothing but the sound of my own ragged breathing and the drip-drip of condensation falling from unseen branches. I pushed onward, trying to ignore the gnawing dread, trying to put distance between me and that weird clicking sound. My headlamp beam sliced through the fog, catching on something pale against the dark bark of a massive old oak. I walked closer, pushing aside a low-hanging, dripping branch. It was a carving. Freshly done, by the looks of it, the wood underneath was still light, almost white, against the weathered trunk. It wasn't graffiti, not initials or anything like that. It was a symbol. It was maybe 10 minutes after finding the carving that the smell hit me. Faint at first, carried on the damp, foggy air. I almost missed it, thinking it was just the usual smell of decay, wet leaves and mulch that you always get in dense woods. But this was different. It had an undercurrent, a sickly sweet, almost coppery tang beneath the rot, like meat that had turned, but with something else mixed in, something almost fragrant. It made the hairs on my arms stand up. The smell led me to a small clearing, almost perfectly circular, like the trees had deliberately grown away from this spot. In the center were the clear signs of a recently abandoned campsite. But it was wrong, way too tidy, almost sterile. A fire pit held cold, gray ashes, meticulously swept clean. No discarded wrappers, no dropped gear, nothing you'd expect from campers, except for the bones, scattered around the edge of the fire pit, looking almost deliberately placed. Click, click, click. It was back, and closer this time, way closer. Coming from just beyond the clearing in the dense, fog-choked trees, my breath hitched. Every muscle screamed run, but I was frozen, pinned by the sound. It stopped again, leaving that heavy, waiting silence. This was no animal. This was asterisk something. Something that had been watching me, maybe following me. Something that had been asterisk here at this disturbing campsite. And then I saw it. A shift in the fog. A dark shape detaching itself from the trunk of a massive pine on the far side of the clearing. It was tall, much taller than me and broad, but hunched, moving with an unnerving, almost disjointed gait. It didn't walk like a man, more like gliding or lurching. The fog swirled around it, obscuring details, making it look like a nightmare silhouette. It moved slowly, deliberately, towards the center of the clearing, towards the fire pit. It stayed there for what felt like an eternity, just standing by the fire pit, the rhythmic clicking the only sound. Then it turned its slow, deliberate attention away from the pit and started moving again. Not away, but deeper into the woods on the opposite side from where I was hiding. It seemed to know exactly where it was going, melting back into the fog and trees like a phantom. I waited until I couldn't hear the clicking anymore, waited until my shaking subsided just a little. My headlamp beam trembled across the pile of charred remains. My stomach heaved, bile rising in my throat. I had to force myself to look, force myself to understand what I was seeing, even though every instinct screamed denial. I saw what looked sickeningly like a piece of a rib cage, blackened and cracked by intense heat. Nearby, a fragment that might have been part of a pelvis. And then, something small, nestled amongst the larger fragments. I leaned closer, the beam tightening on it. A twig snapped behind me. I spun around, heart leaping into my throat, fumbling for the heavy-duty flashlight in my pack. Stupid. I know. What was I going to do? Blinded. Standing at the edge of the clearing, partially emerged from the swirling fog, was the figure, the hunter. I could see it more clearly now in the direct beam of my headlamp, and the sight sent ice water through my veins. It was draped in crudely stitched animal pelts, stained dark in patches. I stood there for a few seconds that stretched into an eternity, me frozen in terror, the hunter perfectly still, watching me through those dead eye sockets in its mask. The only sound was my own ragged breathing and the distant drip of water somewhere in the woods. Then slowly, deliberately, it raised its free hand. Not in a threatening way, not holding a weapon. It beckoned, a single, slow curl of its high-drapped fingers. An invitation. Come here. My mind short-circuited. What the hell did that mean? That gesture, that soft clicking, that first step towards me, it shattered my paralysis. Raw animal panic took over. I screamed, a thin, ragged sound that tore from my throat, and I turned and ran. Ran blindly back the way I thought I'd come, away from the clearing, away from the bones, away from that beckoning nightmare. I didn't care about being lost anymore, didn't care about the map or direction, just away. Branches whipped at my face. Unseen roots threatened to trip me with every frantic step. I don't know how long I ran, fueled by sheer adrenaline. My legs felt like lead, my chest was about to explode. Just when I thought I couldn't take another step, that I'd collapse right there on the damp leaves for the hunter to find me, I saw it. A light, a faint, warm yellow glow filtering through the dense fog ahead. My heart leaped with a desperate, irrational hope. A cabin, a house, civilization, safety. I stumbled towards it, gasping, pushing through a final wall of dense bushes. The pounding stopped echoing. Silence, except for my own harsh gasps and the crackle of the fire somewhere inside. Then a scraping sound, a heavy bolt being drawn back. The door creaked open slowly. I braced myself, ready to babble out my terror, ready to beg for sanctuary. Standing in the warm yellow light spilling from doorway wasn't some kindly old hermit, wasn't a ranger, wasn't anyone I could have expected. It was the hunter, but the mask was gone. Beneath it was a face.